Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you, and it is Sunday at about 9:20. Hope everyone's doing good. So today's show is a show that I'm very, very excited about. I'm going to be talking about a movie that I have been wanting to see. It's probably overall the last year and a half or so, probably been for me the most anticipated movie that I've been wanting to see. In all honesty, and obviously there's been a few, but this movie I've been wanting to see. I'd heard over the past few months and also last year. I had a couple of friends tell me how terrific this film was. I had seen the trailer for it, and I thought the whole concept behind it and the trailer just had me totally intrigued, and I was I thought initially my first reaction was, this is exactly what kind of needs to happen to make to bring back, you know, kind of for me a dying franchise, and that movie is Prey, and Prey is the latest installment in the Predator franchise. Um, And again, I have to say off the bat, but before I get into kind of talking about the movie, I easily think this movie Prey, first and foremost, was really worth the pain and aggravation of as far as waiting to see this movie for so long, like over a year. And I easily think that this movie completely eradicates or eclipse all of the movies in the franchise, with the exception of the very first Predator movie, starring, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is, easily one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies ever made. And also, if not the greatest movie of Schwarzenegger's career. I'm a huge Predator fan. I think that movie is just a masterpiece. I've seen that movie so many times. I am not. I think Predator 2 with Danny Glover is decent. It's got some cool things about it. There are Gary Busey's also in it. There's certain aspects of that movie that are pretty good, but then I also feel it's story wise and even tension wise, because I think one of the strengths of the first Predator, not only is it a great horror film and sci-fi movie and just an epic action movie, it has so much suspense to it, and it's got a good story. I love how it starts in a particular light or in a particular way, but then there's a big shift in the story, and the movie becomes about something different, and it's very suspenseful. And I felt like the second one had some really good elements, but it didn't have that kind of interesting narrative, where the story went, and it didn't have that level of intensity as far as the suspense. It was okay, it was okay. It's pretty good. The rest of the Predator movies, I could just do away with. I'm not, I liked some. There's a couple of the Predator versus Alien movies that came out, and there's one or two of them that I thought were pretty decent. But after seeing Prey, I feel like this movie just completely destroys any of those movies in every conceivable way. And I feel like this movie Prey is just as good, um, on many levels as the original Predator movie. It has it has all of those elements that made the original such a damn classic. And again, this movie had a weird history. It almost I rented it last night on DVD. Unfortunately, I did not. They did not. Went to Opras Video, and they did not have it on Blu-ray, unfortunately, but which was surprising. So I got Prey on DVD, and this movie. The reason it's been such a long journey to finally see this movie, was because this movie was originally, it was going to be put into the theater, like how things were. Like, at one point, this is how movies were released. But because of the situation with streaming and all of these other variables, it was not. It was only available on Hulu, which is one of the big streaming companies. And this film is also a 20th Century Fox is still the major studio that owns this entire franchise. And but the production and the finance from of this film was done through Hulu, which is one of the biggest streaming companies. They also last year did a film, did the Hellraiser film, the reimagining, if you will, which is actually quite good. And that's been a trend with a lot of these streaming companies is that they have been financing a lot of films, and but the thing that is, on one hand, it's great that some of these filmmakers obviously are having problems getting the finance that they need to bring their vision to the into fruition, which I don't understand. And so it's great that they essentially have these other companies, a whole slew of companies that are willing to back these projects. So Prey was had basically become a fully financed product project through Hulu. And but the thing that was awful was that it was not going to be released in theaters. And on top of that, there was no originally they had no plans to release this movie in any kind of physical form, like no DVD version, no Blu-ray, or no 4K version. It was only going to be available to see it initially through Hulu, and then after that, through Hulu, after its initial release, you could only see it through Hulu and some other streaming platforms, and then that was it. Super disappointing. That was one of the things I didn't like about. I mean, I had some issues around. It was mostly around the technical side of because of it comes back to the reason I don't like to stream movies. But one of the things I was really disappointed with Hellraiser was, I did really like that movie. I wish I had the chance to see it on the big screen because it would have been so much better. But anyway, it was a tough situation around this movie. Prey was released it came out last year in 2022, and this movie was huge. It was a massive success when it came out through streaming. And I don't stream, so I did not get a chance to see it. And I had heard from a few different friends and a few other people. Had read some reviews to a degree about the film, and across the board, people were saying that this movie was really, really good. Like really, a return to form, and it was really well crafted and a very satisfying movie. So I was very interested, and I'm a huge fan of period pieces, and that this film was set in the Western times. It's set in 1782, I believe, and it is set during the times when white settlers were first coming to the Americas, and but basically the whole scenario takes place on this Comanche during the time of the Comanche when they lived and breathed on in their natural lands. So I thought, wow, like such a cool premise. Like this could be such a cool thing, and I had seen the trailer for it, and I thought this could be really, really cool. And I heard again that this movie was really good. So I finally watched it last night, and I was kind of blown away by how awesome this movie is. It was actually better than I thought it would be. A really great cast, wonderful direction. The cinematography is really great. It's such an original way of telling the story. The action is just incredible, wonderful kills. It has such a fresh approach. It has a lot of suspense, and the atmosphere for this film is just tremendous, tremendous. The cast, again, these were all actors and actresses I had never seen before, but the cast is just killer. Amber Midhunter or Amber Midthunter plays the lead, and she is just spectacular. Dakota Beavers, Dane Liegro, and this film was directed by Dan Trachtenberg. He has worked on a few other films that I'm aware of. He did the one of the Cloverfield films, 10 Cloverfield, with John Goodman in 2016, which is a pretty decent movie, pretty original movie. I've seen it once and I thought it was pretty cool, pretty original. Of course, it's like a part of the Cloverfield kind of universe, and I think there's like three of those movies. I really love the first one, but it's a pretty good movie and pretty suspenseful, great atmosphere. But he's, for the most part, Dan Trachtenberg is a relatively new filmmaker on the scene. He's like worked in the industry for a few years, and he's done a few films. But he's kind of I look at him as like fresh blood. Like he and I really have to say that I feel like he knocked it. This movie Prey is a home run. He knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. And like I said in the beginning of the show, this movie is so well done, so well conceived, so well executed that it just automatically for me wipes the Predator franchise slate clean. As far as it just it like it's so well done that it just automatically for me just eradicates all of the other films. It makes all of the other films in the franchise, and there are quite a few. There's like two Predator versus Alien movies. There's the Predators movie, which was produced by Robert Rodriguez, which was a really disappointing movie. Had some good moments. Predator 2 with Danny Glover is decent, but the story is just not as strong. The suspense is not as strong as the first one. The last Predator movie, which I can't remember the title, is just an atrocity. There's some really bad movies in the franchise, and this movie was so well done, so well executed, and so strong, so memorable, that it just eradicates for me instantly. It just wipes all of that stuff away. And I really feel that Prey is on par or pretty much on equal ground as the original Predator, directed by John McTiernan, starring, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I think is also, aside from maybe Terminator, it possibly is the greatest role that Schwarzenegger has ever done. And Predator is a movie that I watch pretty regularly. It's one of my all-time favorite sci-fi horror movies. It's got so much great suspense to it, but the action is just great. When that film came out, it was so original, and I feel like this film has that same essence. It really feels like they put a lot of love into this film, and the cast is just phenomenal. Like it's got, and the other thing that's really cool about this movie is that there's a lot of there's an emotional quality to this movie. Like I really care about this family, this Comanche family. I really love that it's a period piece. It really, you get the feel that you're kind of in this universe. You're transported to this different time. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is breathtaking. The kind of the newer design of the Predator is just badass. I love that this movie has really stripped down and bare bones, and it's got this rawness to it, and I love that it's not so because of where we are with technology, with CGI and all of these other new technical things that filmmakers are able to do, like to a degree, at a higher level. I love that this movie doesn't overutilize that tech, and it feels kind of low down and dirty. It feels a little bit more raw, and I love that it's like stripped down. It's not like it doesn't over. It's nothing's overblown. I love that it's got this kind of period piece appropriate thing with like what the technology was and what just what it comes down to how these Native Americans survived, their weaponry, how they lived, how they protected themselves, how they protected their loved ones, how they hunted, how they interacted with each other. And I love that it's based completely in that universe. It's not anything that is unpractical. And I love the practicality of that. That to me is the strength of this movie. One that's a problem I think sometimes with films and franchises where you try to, where there are say prequels or sequels. A big example for that for me where that has gone horribly wrong is say with the Alien franchise movies. Of course Prometheus came out, which is an okay movie. That I don't know. That movie I have mixed things about, which of course is the prequel to Alien, and it was also directed by Ridley Scott. There are some things about that movie I like to a degree, and then some things I don't like about it. And then there was also Alien Covenant, which was also directed by Ridley Scott, which is kind of a disappointing. Well, to put it mildly, I think that movie is kind of an awful movie. Prometheus, for example, I think is cool in a lot of ways because it does show you new things. Ridley Scott does introduce some new and interesting and almost to a degree abstract concepts. But the whole premise, the order, the way that film is supposed to fit in that alien universe is that it's supposed to take place before Alien, starring Ridley Scott. Like this is a prequel, and one of the strengths of Alien with Sigourney, the first one with Sigourney Weaver, is that movie has a very raw, realistic kind of approach. The technology isn't all working so well. Everything feels lived in. He Ridley Scott based that movie. The biggest influence on that film was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ridley Scott has talked about that movie a lot. And initially he got the idea to make the way he was putting together Alien was from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And his whole concept was the idea of like truckers in space, where you have these like, blue collar, working class, or working poor people set in this environment, but it has a grittiness to it. It nothing, technology is advanced, but things are also, feel like they're lived in, and they're also kind of broken down, and everything's a little bit dirty. There's nothing so clean and polished within that movie, and to me, that's one of the strengths of that movie, is that technology is obviously advanced because it's set in the future, but it doesn't overcompensate. There's nothing. It's set in a pragmatic kind of world of where technology would be in that place. And when Prometheus came out, which is supposed to be storyline wise, is supposed to be the prequel to Alien, the thing that I don't like about Prometheus, and again, I think it has some good things about it, particularly around some of the concepts, but the technology is so over the top. The technology, if you watch those two films back to back, say Prometheus and then Alien, the technology in Prometheus is comes across as being so much more advanced and so much more of a part of everyone's experience and the way they interact, as opposed to when you watch Alien with Sigourney Weaver, where everything is kind of you lived in. It's a little bit stripped down. Some things don't quite work. It is it's still in development. But with Prometheus, everything is from a technological standpoint, everything is so advanced and so over the top. So from a narrative perspective, it doesn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form. Like to me, it there's so much of this tech in Prometheus, and everything from like the medical tools to the weaponry, it's so advanced as compared to Alien. And so it cohesively, and that's a problem because obviously that's a result because of where we are at with the production level of things with CGI and these advancements for filmmakers. And Ridley Scott used that to his advantage, but storyline wise, it doesn't make any sense. And I think of Prometheus, there's so much of that where it's clearly advanced. It takes me out of the movie, and it doesn't line up. It doesn't stick its landing, and there is no cohesiveness really with that film compared to Alien. And I think what they did with Prey is they totally stuck with that landing. Like it really, because this film is essentially a prequel. You know, it's really it's unique because I feel Prey is totally its own movie. You could see it without necessarily having to see the original Predator, and I think it's that good. It's a standalone movie. But the thing that's really awesome about it is storyline wise that this film acts as a prequel to the original, and it totally stays within that kind of aesthetic and in that world where like the technology in this prequel is even more bare bones and even more stripped down, and there are even more limitations. And I thought that was one of the best things that was real. That was the strongest thing that was executed so well for this film, because for me it like that's like the entire kind of framework of the movie. So when you have all of that shit really together like that, as a viewer and as a fan, that really keeps you in this world and keeps you invested because there's a level of where it's like it makes sense. It's got a practical, you know, thing about it that gives you a sense, even though it's obviously a science fiction movie, gives you a sense of reality. And I just thought that was awesome. And they really stuck with it. And there's a lot. The other cool thing about this movie is that there's a lot of great, almost like hand to hand combat scenes. Because, and again, that's because weaponry was, you know, really in to a degree in its infant stage at this point in our in history. So it really shows that, and I thought that was really awesome. And with the Alien, or with Predator itself, it's the same thing. There are aspects to his technology where you see that it's not quite as advanced. There's still like some really interesting things about his technology and his weaponry that are really cool and that are original, but it's not story wise and aesthetically, it's not advanced beyond what the Schwarzenegger movie is. And I just thought that was really awesome. And I love that it has this really rawness, this really raw, stripped down thing of where there's more reliance on hand to hand combat. The kind of they really focus a lot on bringing you into this universe with the Comanche and this family dynamic. and it's really great. The characters are great. I thought that dynamic where they focused on the family was pretty tremendous. Really, really, really well done. The characters were really fleshed out. I thought you're given just enough to automatically kind of care about the people on the screen and the characters. I thought Amber Mid Thunder and Dakota Beavers were just stellar, and especially Amber Midhunter, who I thought was awesome. She is, I feel like she's kind of like Ripley in the Alien. Like she's this female who becomes this hero figure, and she's incredible in it. She totally carries the movie. Even though I think the rest of the film and the other cast in this film are equally as good, but she's really great. And I think that this film, not only being a really kick-ass action movie and horror-based sci-fi movie, this film actually has some heart. It actually has some heart. There has you have like an emotional kind of connection to it. Like you actually care about it, and you get so it has some cool resonance aside from it being just a kick-ass action movie. The cinematography is awesome. I mean, you really get a sense of being transported in this universe, and that's and I think this movie is so damn good. I'm excited to see what they can do because because of the time travel nature of what Predator is, in the history of his kind of blueprint in the universe, traveling the universe, all different periods of time, and acting as kind of the apex predator, and and challenging himself as a species against other enemies. They could realistically, put this story in, any period of history. Like, it could be, and set and build upon this whole kind of period piece concept, which I think would be awesome. Like if they did a film like this, say it was set during the time of the Roman Empire, or something during World War II, or I mean, endless. It could be an endless amount of during the Civil War would be really interesting. I mean, an endless, or something way, way into the future, like where it's really over the top, as far as sci-fi. I mean, you could do so many things, and that's the thing that I loved about this, because as a period piece, they nailed it to a T in this film, and so I'm generally excited. And I think that this film, again, it's a standalone movie, but it's so well done, and if they were able to do this again and just with this kind of quality, I see it in a heartbeat. I think this character Predator is such a cool character because again they could set his character in pretty much any period and create any kind of period piece around it, especially if it's done this well. There's an endless amount of stories that they could tell, and so I'm excited. I'm hoping that that's what they will do. The feeling that I got too after watching this movie was I want to see more. I really want to see more because I thought this movie just was awesome, and it was better than I expected. I thought it would be pretty good, but I thought it was easily the best one since the first one, and I think in a lot of ways it's just as good, and that's saying a lot, because the span of time between the films, the amount of movies that are in the franchise. The Predator franchise is a huge franchise. And every now and then, these big, billion-dollar studios, every now and then they get it right. And I feel like this is an example of getting it right, like really doing something new and fresh, and that brings it, brings it back. And I feel like this is an example of that because, there's so many franchises that have great films, especially usually in the beginning of a franchise, but they're kind of broken and they're really messy and there's not a cohesive thing and the Alien franchise, for instance, and there's a lot of films that are just not very good. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, it's kind of, there's not that consistency, so, but every now and then a studio that commands a big franchise get it right. And to me, this is a primetime example of that. So I really, really want to get this on Blu-ray. I will be super excited to buy this on Blu-ray. I think it will be totally kick-ass. It was great visually with the sound and everything. It was pretty intense on DVD. And it was interesting too. I was watching a video last night on a guy who, because they just released Prey on Blu-ray in 4K, and I was watching a guy who had just bought the 4K version of Prey, and he had said that he was also a really big fan of the film, but he right from the get-go, and it's something I always talk about, was he was like the quality, versus watching it through a streaming service is like 5 times better. The sound, the picture resolution, everything is 4 times better. You're just getting so much more because of, and he attributed the same thing I've always thought, attributed the reason that happens is because of the compression that's used on the films when they're streamed, and how that technology works. And then when you have a Blu-ray release or even a DVD release of it, because it's a physical release, it's closer, it's what really realistically it's what the filmmakers want you to really see, because they're you're seeing it at an actual in a format that it's meant to be seen in. So I thought that was really, really cool that he talked a lot about that in the beginning of his video. But tremendous movie, easily the best one in the franchise since the original. Totally kick-ass. A movie I had been really, really anticipating. I was super stoked, and to top it all off, it was better than I hoped. So I highly recommend any fans out there of the Predator series, or any fans in general of really awesome science fiction horror movies, go see this movie. It's kick-ass. So thanks again. This is Jason Dean, and we will see you next time. Peace.